was wrong, we felt it inside. Something told us, do not comply. Turn off the news, turn off the TV. It's time to think, get off your knees. We tried to warn loved ones, oh did we try? We tried to save lives, but we were denied. Sadly we failed and many of them died. We were kicked to the side, we did not hide. We took to the streets, we would not comply. Our conscience told us this was the world's largest lie. At first we were few, but we shortly grew. Melbourne streets saw sights that had never been seen. We fought for our rights, for all to be free. People thrown to the ground, pepper spray to the face. No matter what age, we were locked up and caged. Then the guns came out, they had no care. They shot their own people, running in fear, unarmed and peaceful. We stood for our rights, they would not stop us. We would not give up the fight. We were locked out of cafes, our families withdrew. No Christmas, no birthdays, no celebrations we knew. We were germs, enemies, a danger to you. You watched the counts on mainstream news. No further would you look, we were all cooked. Deluded, brainwashed, segregation we lived through, whilst you lived your life without any clue. People thrown to the ground, pepper spray to the face. No matter what age, we were locked up and caged. Then the guns came out, they had no care. They shot their own people, running in fear, unarmed and peaceful. We stood for our rights, they would not stop us. We would not give up the fight. Something was wrong, we felt it inside. Something told us, do not comply.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you've had a good week so far. Tonight's guest, I was going to give him quite a large intro, but I'm not going to now because he has so much to talk about and I don't want to take up any of his time. So tonight's guest is Dr. John. Good evening, John. How are you?
How are you going?
I'm good. How
I
are
recognise
you?
that guy.
Who?
Hey, Donna, how are you?
Oh, he's got me already. Good, John. How are you?
Good. I mean, I was just taking in those images that you had at the beginning of the show, and of course, you know, I remember we were all there for all of that, you know. And interestingly enough, I had lunch today with somebody you know, and would remember, but it was that day when Nick Patterson got his arm dislocated.
Yes.
So
yes. Yeah, I was with him.
So I had lunch with our friend today in Elwood or Brighton Beach.
Yeah, lovely.
In the wind and the cold. Anyway, okay. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Start with who I am.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, of course. So I was born in Melbourne in the 60s. President Kennedy was still alive when I was born. And so I grew up, I went to a good school and, you know, sort of got a good education, but it was really kind of wasted on me. And after, you know, basically doing, you know, sort of trying to find my way, I ended up studying Chinese medicine. And I found I had a knack, like I have sort of like a dyslexia. and it requires me to sort of bore down into like the very depths of anything I want to understand. I have to master that knowledge, and I found Chinese medicine was very challenging. And I spent 9 years with my teacher, who was Professor Wong. And so from my early 20s all the way up into my early 30s, I was studying with Prof. And I ran my own clinic. I mean, some people might even recognize me as being my patient. I had thousands of patients in the 90s and so on. And I wrote in '95. I wrote a book about controlling your blood sugar levels, and that book became a bestseller in Australia. And it was the first one of the well, it's probably the first book for the general public written on ketosis. And that book was translated into 4 languages: Hebrew, Spanish, Chinese, of course, English. And anyway, so in 2005, I left Australia. I was in Special Forces for 4 years in all of that. And in 2005, I left Australia to go to Afghanistan for a 3-week job as being the personal, like the close protection bodyguard of the former head of Interpol. And after that gig ended, I was asked if I wanted to stay or if I wanted to go back to Australia. And I said, well, I've come this far, so I'd rather stay. And I spent a further 5 years in Afghanistan. And during that time, I worked for various agencies and different governments and things like that, doing a variety of like close protection jobs, security jobs, and I worked for a period of time, basically because I spoke Chinese, and I was able to penetrate these sex trafficking rings that were operating in Kabul at the time, and I was able to track down these women had disappeared into the underworld, and an American and I worked together, bringing these women out of captivity and repatriating them back to China. And anyway, that was sort of like the early days. And then, yeah, I mean, I could just go on and on. I wrote a book. If people, I mean, it's not in print anymore, but there was a book called Biting Through, and that was basically the story of Afghanistan. And so I came back to Australia, and I worked. I hadn't come back to Australia in 5 years, and anyway, so basically, I worked in sort of as rehab for me. I worked as a volunteer in Bali for 3 years at a hospital, and it was a fertility clinic. So I was helping women have children and generally just all their outpatients and so on. And then I was called to England, and I was in England for a while, and eventually came back to Australia. And then I was asked to go to America. I'm sorry, this seems boring, but anyway, I was asked to come to America and be the medical director of a charity in the United States for returned servicemen and naval special warfare guys, because whilst I was in Afghanistan, I worked with US Special Ops, Navy SEALs, this sort of thing.
Wow.
And one of the SEALs started this charity for United States Marine Corps and naval special warfare guys. And so I was living in America for a while and just traveling around, seeing veterans and basically like just engaging with them. I mean, being an Australian is, it's like being a magical creature, like you appear and bring guys out of their depression and suicidal tendencies and things like that, back together. And then I came back to Australia to renew my visa, and
Yep.
what happened? COVID. And so
When you
I
came
was
back,
unable. Yeah, I came back just at the stroke of midnight, and
right.
and so everybody knows what happened, and so now that was like 6 years ago,
Mm.
and from the very beginning, of course, we didn't know what was going to happen. You know what I mean? Like we sort of, we all knew what in the first few weeks there was confusion, uncertainty, and but there was slowly it was becoming more and more strange. Some of the claims and this sort of thing, it didn't make any sense to a medical practitioner. And and so when the first protests began, you and I stood under the clocks in Flinders Street, and
We
we
met at
declared us.
Greg Hunt's office. We met at, remember?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, I mean, we all went to Flinders Street and basically waited for the curfew to begin, and you know
Yes.
what I mean. And everybody was there. Monica was there, and Nick. I imagine everybody was there. So anyway, and and that was that. And so we've just watched that whole train wreck happen, and here we are. So it's interesting because people have really, I guess, at that time, if we go back to the early days, we were saying, I wish people would wake up and, we could get everybody on board. But let's face it, we had hundreds of thousands of people marching through the streets of Melbourne, like the biggest protests that's ever seen. And it was quite an amazing experience to be a part of that. And of course, walking the streets at night in Melbourne during the curfew, and not a soul, like not a soul. I remember I was with a friend of mine. We were on Elwood Beach, and it was about 8 o'clock on a Saturday night, and we looked down to St Kilda, and we looked all the way back to Brighton, and there was nobody. And I said to my friend, remember this, you'll never see this again. This is it. And we walked through, we could walk right down the middle of the road, and we walked past, we looked into people's apartments or whatever, and they're all just sitting there in front of the telly, and it was surreal. It was surreal.
John,
so,
just before you go on, sorry, I have to tell, we used to have secret meetings at my house, and John used to come to them. Do you remember the secret meetings, John? And everyone had come 5 minutes in between spaces, knock on the door, come in. And I got dobbed in by the neighbours about protests and stuff, but we never got caught for that one. And we had about 10 people, didn't we? Sneaking in the doors. It was great. Sorry, that was fun. Go on, John. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. The phone is my phone hasn't got a lot of speed, so it breaks down a little bit. But I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Good.
So yeah, of course, and that it was that conspiratorial experience where I used to drive through the roadblocks dressed as a priest, ride up on my bicycle with a basket full of baguettes and red wine, and and the Nazis would stop me, and they want to search my thing, and where am I going? And I'm administering to my flock, Father, like, oh, well, on your way, like this sort of thing. It was it was incredible. The ring of bullshit, we called it. The ring around Melbourne, the ring of steel. We just called it the ring of bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I remember one. Sorry, go on, Donna.
No, I didn't say anything. You go.
Sorry. Okay. I remember one night I was coming back from the city, and there was not I'm on the southeastern freeway, not a soul, no cars, and I drove. I was so amazed. I drove to the police station in Hastings just to see if there was anybody there. I mean, maybe there was. It didn't look like there was anybody home.
They're too
But
scared to
I
come
was
out.
just like, where is it?
They're too
Say
scared
again?
to come out. They're too scared to come out. They might have
Well,
got COVID.
they're all just kicking back. They don't have anything to do. I mean, where's the crime? There is none, I mean, anyway, well, we're all familiar with that. We've all been sort of through it.
Yeah.
And, when I think about my parents, both went through the war. My mother was German, my father was English, and they both went through World War II. And of course, as a child, I listened, I mean, look, when I was born, I mean, the war was like 15 years ago, 17 years ago. And, oh, someone's sending a message. Okay. And
That's
I
all
can't read it. But anyway, I'll just take it as positive. Anyway, and as a child, I listened to their experiences. So that was like 17 years ago. And I thought, we're going through this experience, and what are we going to tell our children? Or, when we're,
Mhm.
well, how bad was it? Well, we couldn't go and have coffee. I couldn't go to my gym, like all this sort of stuff. But that wasn't it. What really happened is they killed thousands and thousands of people. And
Yes.
I mean, I just before the show, there was a thing on Sky News about Brett Sutton going, oh, Daniel Andrews just made it all up, and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, of course they made it up. It was ridiculous, but of course it's meant to be ridiculous, and these guys, of course, we think that they come up with these ideas, but they don't. They just do whatever they're told.
Oh,
They follow orders,
yeah.
and you can see that it's becoming more. I mean, it's obvious that they don't. I mean, what's a politician? Is a public servant, a servant of the public? Of course not. They don't listen to anything that the
Yeah.
public says. Look at The Voice. They're bringing it back. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he was talking about there was a referendum in Australia. Some people might be familiar with it. I just took it as rote, but anyway. So apparently there was a referendum given to the Australian people about a third tier of government, and whether or not they wanted a third tier of government. Of course, everyone said no, and so they put it to the people that maybe 10 years later, same question, same answer, no. Third tier of government is councils. And what happened? We've got councils, and who do the councils follow? The United Nations. That's who they are. They represent the United Nations here in Australia.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I won't get too far down that road.
No, let's get into some of your conspiracy stuff.
Okay,
John's
I'll keep an eye on the time.
Yes, so you've got to get into.
So just quickly, so what happened in my come to Jesus moment was basically in the early 90s. And, I was in the commandos. We had a top secret clearance, and, but admittedly it's a peacetime army, so we're just doing lots of fun things. Anyway, so a friend sent me a video, and I think from memory, the video might have been The Money Masters by Mick Maloney, I think, or Mick Malone. Not the comedian. I might be getting confused, but Mike Maloney. And so basically it was like a 3-hour video. In those days you got a VHS tape and you sat down and you watched it. And basically it was just talking about like the creation of the Federal Reserve and money and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of interesting. And I was able to, get onto the Reserve Bank of Australia's website, and I was able to read their charter. And so I'm reading through their charter, and in their charter it says that the Reserve Bank of Australia is a private entity. It's privately owned, and that was sort of like, my God, I'm on the road to Damascus, and I've been hit by the thunderbolt. It's all true, it's all, so that's that was the beginning. And I mean, where I'm at now, like, fundamentally, we're all experiencing the same thing. The amount of information that is pouring down on, like, it's not a fire hose, it's a torrent. So there's a torrent of information that is just pouring down on everybody. And even if you don't want to get wet, you're going to get wet, you're going to get soaked. And I think one of the things I wanted to mention was about how to disseminate information, because there's something. I brought a book to my own home to show you, which people might. I've got a few references which I don't know if that's reversed in the camera or not.
Right. It's good.
Yeah. So this is written by General Michael Flynn, and it's about 5th generation warfare. And as a military type of guy, it's very important to understand what strategy is of your enemy, and what 5th generation warfare is understanding psyops and how the battlefield is between the ears of the people. It's no longer, the fields of France or Germany and Japan and, this sort of stuff. It's right between your ears, and everybody is on the battlefield. And so one of the things that they do is they obviously manipulate the narrative all the time. So let's, for want of a better example, and I do apologize because there's so much emotion associated with this, but as an example, for the killing of Charlie Kirk, and we all saw we pretty much all saw him get shot, and immediately, besides obviously him getting shot, there's immediately a narrative appears that is counter to what you saw. Okay, this is just an example. I'm not talking about the nuts and bolts of what actually happened. I don't really know 100%, but so what happens is, as soon as something appears, there is immediately a counter argument. And the thing that I learned was that if you could imagine, the people who pulled the trigger are the people who started the counter argument, right? That's how it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is, that's not what you saw. You saw something. What happened was completely different. And we heard, he was still alive. Like all this sort of stuff. I'm not debating it. I'm just saying.
Yes.
At first, so what the point I'm getting at, and this is sort of one, I just wanted to touch upon this, is about how to disseminate information, because we are being bombarded with information. It's you had those 2 books, 1984, and you had Brave New World. And so in 1984, you've got this top-down Big Brother, complete totalitarian, and Brave New World by Huxley was we have too much information and we can't decide. And to me, that's what I think is happening. We have too much information. We can't disseminate that information in a coherent picture. And that is one of the 5th generation warfare strategies, is to create this uncertainty in people's minds that we can't, because we cannot be unified. We can't say, this is exactly what happened, this is exactly what we see, and this is what we understand. Because there's, no, that's not right. This is, did you see this or that? So during this, sorry if I'm banging on, just make that fist and I'll stop talking, right?
No,
so
it's good.
Yeah, okay. Or we can do that drop the subject, right? So during the Vietnam War, they had to disseminate information, because they're trying to find the bad guys and all this sort of thing. And so they had a chart, pretty simple. They had A to F and 1 to 6, I think. And yeah, 1 to 6. F is the sixth letter, I guess. Anyway, so you got A to F and 1 to 6. So if somebody said, we went into this village and we spoke to this person, and there was 30 of us there, and we all saw, the guy showed us something, we all looked at it, we came back, and now we're telling you about it. That's sort of like A1, so that goes right up in that top. It's verified, and there's other people who've been there and they've seen it as well, and so it's kind of, we can say it's true. But if somebody came along and said something which was not, it's sort of like a rumor, or there was just one person who saw it or something like that, they don't say, oh, that's bullshit, and they just get rid of it. What they do is they put it, and so with my little hand, they put it somewhere in that chart. So it sort of goes down, depending on the veracity of it, well, where it will be. And of course, something like, if it's F6, it's sort of a rumor, but they don't get rid of it. They just file it away, because it will, if it's true, it'll start to be corroborated and upgraded and things like this. So one of the things to avoid these pitfalls of being dragged from one extreme to the other with people's narratives and their ideas and opinions and things like that is, I mean, what I do is I just simply go, okay, well, that, I can't verify that. Like going back to Charlie Kirk, there was somebody else beside him who shot him. There was signals, like all this sort of stuff. I can see that. I'm not exactly sure about that, but I'm not going to discount that. I'm just going to file it away in that possible. It's possible, but I'm waiting for further evidence to start to accumulate, and then I can say more conclusively. And I think that I mean, as a Chinese doctor, my skill is diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
So when people used to come to me, because of course Dr. John's not practicing anymore, because that's a no-no, right? But when people come to me, I would listen very carefully to what they tell me, and I mean, I'm a very good listener, even though I'm blabbing on, but I'd listen very carefully, and I'd watch their little micro cues, their nose touches and hair pulls, hair flicks, things like that. And I'd build a picture of understanding what is wrong. And especially because most of my patients were women, I'd very carefully listen to their explanation of why they think this problem is here, because women are intuitive, and so they have an intuitive understanding, even though maybe not as definitive as my, because of 40 years of medical knowledge, but it gives me a clue. And so I think what I'm trying to say is just put, when you hear stuff, try and just add it to whatever the picture is, and try and make some sort of sense of it. You don't have to believe it, but just use your discernment to try to add that to the picture. Or, I guess you sort of understand what I'm getting at, right?
Yes.
Because I think this is how they manipulate the narrative. And when I was, when I graduated from Chinese medicine and I was running my medical practice, I just one morning I woke up and I wanted to study hypnosis. Never had any desire to study hypnosis, but I went and I spent 2 years at Melbourne Uni, which was great. And I did a postgraduate in clinical hypnosis. And what I learned from that was how the subconscious, the relationship between the conscious mind and the subconscious. And I mean, I can explain it very simply, but you have to remember there's a lot of other people who know this as well, and they use this knowledge all the time. And fundamentally what happens is, if you imagine that your conscious mind is like a spotlight, and wherever that spotlight is directed, that's where it's looking, right? So I mean, you're looking at my picture, you're looking at me, you're not looking at anything else, right? Looking at my eyes, you're back in the room, right? Okay. Hypnosis, right? I'm becoming hypnotic. So what your subconscious is doing, it's everything else, right? So imagine if a room of darkness, you've got this one spotlight that's looking around and it's pinpointing certain things. And what happens, and this is what I want everyone to remember, is the subconscious magnifies and amplifies subjective portions of reality. Okay? It magnifies and amplifies subjective portions of reality. And so what happens is whatever you hold as a belief, your subconscious amplifies that belief and it becomes reality to you. Okay? So I mean one of the very simple things is you have to ask, what are your beliefs? What do you believe in and why do you believe that? For example, because if I think I give you, like, so how old was I when I was doing that? So I was in my early 30s, right? And so I suddenly realized that whatever I held as a belief would become reality. So I used to, I mean, I'm not a very good party person, right? Because I'm used to having one-on-one conversations with people and boring right down to the very core of things. So if you go to a party, it's extremely superficial, and I couldn't really have a conversation with anybody because it was, it's just fluff. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I would avoid going to parties, and and then I realized I can experience any way I want to experience something. I can just decide on how I want to experience it. So I'd go to a party and say, instead of going, oh, I hate parties, they're boring, I wish I wasn't here, because that's what's going to become reality for me.
Yep.
I would say, I've never been here before. This is a unique experience, and there's people here who have unique and interesting conversations. And so I would strike up a conversation with somebody, and they would think, oh, this guy's, he's easy to talk to. He's very friendly. He's attentive. And I made lots of friends, and I had a great time. I could just basically decide how I wanted to enjoy myself because I'm making it up. That's the very fundamental crux of reality. Is basically it is whatever you believe it to be. So
freedom.
It's right. But this, I remember I was listening to oh God, they're two financial commentators, Max Kaiser and his partner. Gee, I'm so sorry, I can't remember her name. It'll come to me, of course. Anyway, but she made this observation, and she said, imagination is our greatest gift, right? Okay, that's pretty true. And then she said, and imagination is our greatest weakness. Because if someone tells you to believe in something, it becomes reality for you, right? So this is the yin and yang of everything. There's always a double side. So it's our greatest gift is our ability to imagine and use our intelligence to predict what's going to happen, or see, like pattern recognition, like this sort of stuff. But also we're easily manipulated by people who understand how to manipulate. And I'll give you a great example. Is when I was studying hypnosis, my teacher was Jim Golding, and he was a master hypnotist, retired. He was a friend and associate of Ainsley Mears and L. Ron Hubbard, right? So you know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
L. Ron Hubbard, Church of Scientology.
Yes.
And so those three guys were master hypnotists, and they had a bet who could make it to be the first millionaire. Right? I mean, this is like the 60s, the 70s, and like a millionaire was like a big deal in those days, right? So they did their thing, and of course, L. Ron Hubbard created the Church of Scientology? Well, he started using hypnosis with his Scientology, and then when the authorities tried to shut him down, because in America, probably in Australia too, the only people who can practice hypnosis are doctors, dentists, and members of the clergy, right? So
Right.
he went from Scientology to the Church of Scientology so he could keep practicing hypnosis as a clergyman, right? So Jim Golding was sort of guy who could go, you're under, right? And like that sort of thing. You'd be like, anyway, so part of studying hypnosis was being hypnotized. And of course, he would hypnotize the whole class. And the whole class, he would say to the class under hypnosis, you're going to do very well. You're going to enjoy your studies. You're going to learn wonderful things. And, you know, you're going to anticipate and look forward to coming to class. Like, you know, that sort of stuff. We call it positive, repetitive, ego strengthening messages, right? You're a very good person. You know, you're very intelligent. You know, this is sort of stuff that you use, you know, when you bring people out of hypnosis, you give them positive, repetitive, ego strengthening messages. Anyway, so one particular day, he said he just, when he, I mean, it's not like every day we all went under hypnosis, but on this one occasion, he hypnotized everybody. And I mean, look, let's face it, this is like 20 years ago. And I can remember, of course, verbatim. He said, from this point on, you will not allow yourself to be hypnotized by anyone or anything without your permission, and only with your permission. And if that person is me, this is what he's doing. He's creating a post-hypnotic suggestion that would make it easier for him to take us deeper and deeper into whatever it is. But because he told us that we would not allow ourselves to be hypnotized by anyone or anything without our permission, what do you think happened when we walked out of Melbourne Uni on a Sunday afternoon, and we walked out into a world where we saw subliminal advertising everywhere? We got in our cars and we drove home, and the whole way we're seeing all this subliminal advertising everywhere, because we've told our subconscious that we will not allow this to happen without our permission. So our subconscious is going, look at this, look at this, look at this. Now, here you go. So do you remember St Kilda Junction?
Yes.
Right? Kilda Junction, right? Now, do you remember in St Kilda Junction, there was a big glass of Coca-Cola on the, at the top of that building, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, right at the corner of the Pean Highway and the start of Fitzroy Street or whatever. So there was a big 10-meter high glass of Coca-Cola, and the Coca-Cola had like big drops, it's icy cold and had big condensation drips on it, things like that. And so Monday morning, or probably Saturday, because we studied on the weekends, we came back, all the people who lived in the eastern suburbs, and we came back to school the next week, and we're saying, like, my God, did you see the beginning of, did you watch the start of this show? And the start of the show was the same as a McDonald's ad. They've copied it, made it sort of look the same. And the question was, did you drive through St Kilda Junction? And everyone went, oh my God, yes. And what was in the glass? A naked woman. You could clearly see it. Like, how many times, how many thousands of times I've looked at that glass growing up in Melbourne, and I never saw it. But after that day, I saw it. So the point, what I'm getting at is these subtleties are very well understood. And I mean, people talk about MK Ultra and everything like that. Yeah, they did. They're using mind control on people right now,
Yeah.
And so for us, the people who are awake, or are waking up, or, whatever you want to describe yourself as, becomes reality. We have to be clear and certain and understand that whatever we hold as a belief becomes reality.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very careful with what you tell yourself, because your self-talk is critical. Now,
Yes.
I'll tell you a quick story, and then we'll start to wrap it up, okay? So there was in the early 1900s, there was a doctor called Emile Coué, and he was a hypnotist, and he would have what's called a séance. He was French, right? And so he would have his, in those days, they didn't really understand what hypnosis was. They thought, I mean, some people thought it was magnetism, because in those days, you know, the word animal magnetism, you've heard of that? That was from hypnosis, because there was a guy called Mesmo, and Mesmo used to go around and he'd magnetize objects, and people would come and get stuck onto them and they couldn't get off, right? And that's where the word mesmerism comes from, right?
Right.
From this guy, Mesmo, right? But he eventually crashed and burned, obviously, for the obvious reasons, right? So one day he didn't show up for work, and everyone got magnetized to the tree outside the front of his clinic. And of course, he hadn't magnetized the tree yet. So what was happening? So that was the end of him. But we still carry it to this day, being mesmerized. So Emile Coué used to have these seances, and so he'd have thousands of people, hundreds of people would turn up, and what he would do is he would walk around the room, and he would, and give people an opportunity to speak to him, and they would come up and, Monsieur Coué, I've lost my husband. I am heartbroken. This is my French, and he'd say, "Thank you for coming. Everything will be fine." And I cannot move my arm, and I have the palsy, and and my hemorrhoid, whatever. And he'd go, "Very good. Thank you for coming." And what he would do, so he'd get up on stage, and he would pick someone out of the audience, and he'd hypnotize. And he'd put a plank of wood down on the stage, and he'd say, "Do you feel that you can walk up and down this plank of wood?" And the person would say, "Of course, monsieur." And they would demonstrate, and he'd say, "Very good." And then he'd put them under hypnosis, and then he would tell them that the plank is now between the spires of the church, the cathedral, right? And then he'd ask them to walk again across the plank of wood. And of course, what happens? So the person is terrified and is swaying, and sometimes the person would fall off and land on the ground screaming. And what's this? Why are they falling? It's their subconscious is trying to kill them, right? Because they've told themselves that they're gonna die. This
Yes.
is the thing about the subconscious. It does whatever you tell it. It's completely literal, right? So it's got the power of a planet, planetary in size is what I say. But it's like a child. It'll do whatever you tell it to do. And so Emile Coué would then tell people his technique. And his technique was, every day, 20 times, you mouth these words. And you would not say it out loud, just move your mouth and say, obviously I'm going to say it, otherwise you won't be able to hear. Every day, in every way, my life gets better and better. And you say it 20 times before you go to sleep, and 20 times when you get up, right? Now, I've used this technique for decades with people, because when I was helping seriously ill patients, I wanted to engage every aspect of their ability to heal. And part of that is engaging the subconscious. I had a guy who came to me, and I said to him, what seems to be the problem? This is what one asks. He says, "I have 6 weeks to live." And I said, "Oh, how long ago did they tell you that?" And anyway, I'm flippant. So he was riddled with cancer. He had pancreatic cancer, and I've got these miracle. I've got a series of patients which are miraculous, right? So this guy was riddled with cancer, and I didn't, I treated a lot of cancer patients, and I just thought, I can't, this guy's probably too far gone. And but what I did is I taught his wife how to hypnotize him. And I had a document which I had to prepare for school, because I was studying at the time, and I just took this document and I just added a few things in the column, and I said, just read this to him. And it says, in a moment, allow yourself to relax and allow those eyes to close. And I'd like you to imagine that you're in a forest and you're walking through the forest. Now, as you do, you can feel the breeze on your skin, and you can hear the birds, and you can feel you can smell the decay and the pine, and you're just building it up. And it was basically just a story about healing and getting better, and light entering your body and radiating out. White light is a very powerful message to the subconscious. And I gave him some other things to take, but really more like a placebo. And I didn't see him again. And I was looking at my appointment book one day, of course, as one does, and I looked and I saw his name in the book. And I thought, oh, God, that's sad, because he was probably walking out of reception, and the receptionist would have said, oh, you need to do you want to make another appointment? And he made another appointment in 3 months, which is what I told him anyway. And I thought, that poor bugger. And so, but I thought, I'll just have a coffee and relax. I'll get a half hour off, Anyway, sure enough, he walks through the door. And so here he is. And I said, how's it going? He said, I'm all better. Now, this is a guy, he's riddled. He's got pancreatic cancer, and it's metastasized right through his system. And I said, he goes, I'm all better. And I went, oh, trying not to look surprised or incredulous. I said, great. And what do the doctors say? And they, blah, blah, blah. Do you have any paperwork? I'll bring it next time. Okay, bring it next time. Let me see the results. I want to see for myself. I never said that, of course, but great, keep up the good work. I'll see you in another 3 months. Comes back after 3 months, shows me all the stuff. His PSA tests are gone. Cancer's gone. And I thought, and of course, I always ask the patients, why do you think you got better? And you gave me some oxygen, and the talk was good, and all sorts of thing. And I think God was just watching over me that day, and yada yada. It's all great, fantastic. Whatever say whatever you like. It doesn't matter. Better is better,
Yes.
So if people, and I do this too, and in closing, okay. So the method is every day in every way, my life gets better and better. Mouth those words, say it 20 times before you go to sleep, before you wake up, because you're in a light hypnoidal relaxed state, okay? And let your subconscious decide on what needs to change in your life, okay? But anyway, I'm sort of digressing, because the point I'm really making is the power of the subconscious and the ability to manipulate the subconscious through the narrative is what is happening to us now. And of course, like you watch any science fiction movie, it's all a dystopian future. Robots killing you, disease, plague, all this sort of stuff, right? That's what they want you to believe. When have you ever seen a science fiction movie where everything's gone fine and we live in a utopia? You name one. There is none. You know what I mean? Anyway, so with that,
John,
I think I'm just looking at the time.
I've got a question here for you, though. If you can answer it in time. It was about MK Ultra. I think it was, do you know how they do it? I had it up for a bit. Do you know how they do it?
Well, I can extrapolate simply by what I've already said.
Yeah.
Tells you, the difference with MK Ultra is they used psychotropic medication, among other things, deprivation, lights and drugs. And who was that guy? Is it Graham Brown or something like that? He, the guy, not mind freak, but he's an Englishman. He demonstrated how you could take a person and make them shoot somebody under hypnosis. And he shot Stephen Fry on stage with a blank. Brown somebody, and see, you know, when Robert Kennedy was shot by Saran, everyone thought that that was like the Manchurian Candidate, because Saran shot Robert Kennedy, not JF Kennedy, but the brother or the uncle, I guess, shot him, and then just dropped the pistol and just went like, "Oh my God, like what have I done?" And people just went, "Yeah, that's a post-hypnotic suggestion." So MK Ultra would be, I mean, look, they take, you know, we know if you take a child, a baby, and you torture the baby, it shatters the personality, and so the child has multiple personalities. And then what they do is they focus on each of these personalities. So you've got one personality that is the prostitute. You've got the other personality that's the spy. You've got the other personality that's the courier, and you've got the personality that's the suicidal personality. And they all are linked with code words. And there's a great story. I can't remember who it was, but he met a woman who was an attaché to some senator, and it just seemed really odd that this was this young woman. And he had a friend who was a CIA agent. And he said, "It's really weird. This guy's got this young girl, and she seems like she's in a trance." And he said, "Yeah, I know all about it." And he said, "Do you want to, you know, like you want to help her? I'll tell you how to help her. Ring her up. You know, this is the phone number. Ring her up. Tell her that it's God speaking, and arrange to meet her." And he's like, "What?" And he goes, "Get on the phone, call her, say, 'This is God, and I'll meet you at the Burger King in half an hour.'" And so he did it. And half an hour later, or whenever, she walks in a trance, and there she is. And he was able to pull her out, you know, using hypnosis. Look at people who've been abducted by aliens, you know. What cracks open the story? They go under hypnosis, and of course the whole story comes out. You know, it's very interesting, but you know, that's another story for another time.
Have you back to talk about all that stuff, John? Yes, please. You didn't hear me, did you?
Your voice is modulating. Yeah, say again.
We have to have you back to talk about all that stuff.
If you want.
Well,
you know, I mean, I've got lots of stuff to talk about. But,
I know there's so much, and you haven't covered any of it. But you've been very interesting. I've loved it. Once again, this is why we need to have you back, because you've got so much to talk about. And me personally, I love listening to you. I love all your stories and theories and facts. And
what am I doing?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you. Yes, better. Look, see, tomorrow, someone said come back tomorrow. Yes, would love Dr. John to come back.
You know where to find me.
Yeah, well, you're coming back. Very interesting. Thank you. And we've got Deb, Trinity. Deb, you know Deb, she was in our meetings. Yes, come back.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Great.
So
well, look, thanks for everybody for tuning in.
Yes. All right, I'll shush now. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, and much love to everybody. And stay the course. Fight the right battle. We're on the right side, and we are going to win this, right? Because we're in the Aquarian age now, and here we are. And we've all come here at this time to transition into the new age, right? And for these guys who are trying to stop it, it's the end times for them, but it's the start for us, right? But we've just got to hold on tight. It won't finish until 2032. That's when it times out. That's when governments have collapsed, and we're basically starting a new world, I believe. Anyway, God be with everybody, and whoever you worship or whatever you believe in, okay?
You can talk for 2 more minutes if you like.
Well, how about I just hold my breath?
No, all right. Yeah. I'll sign off now.
Okay, I'll see you later. Everyone be good, and yeah, we'll see you next time. And thanks, Donna. You're an inspiration to everybody. and I admire your strength, your perseverance, and your honesty. And like, you're a straight arrow, like all the amazing women that I met during the protest. And believe me, if you weren't there for it, the protest was pretty much all women, all lionesses were there, all the same type of women, that look in their eyes. They were there, they saw the danger, and they wanted to point the danger out to their men. And so the men could fight on their behalf and protect them, protect their children. Now, when we went to that last protest, there was lots of guys, and that's great to see. It was mostly men with a few of the women thrown in. But basically, in the old days, that's what you saw. You saw women standing up to the police, women and children, with these people in black spraying with pepper spray. I mean, you got to show that picture of me getting pepper sprayed the other week with the dog. I mean, I said it to you, I believe. But anyway, next time.
Yeah, I should have put it up.
And so, yeah, we all. Yeah, I've got my dog here. Is my gender detection dog. I take him to the protests. You know, sometimes he gets a hit, sometimes he doesn't. You know, you can never be too sure. But anyway, I'm kidding. Okay, I think we better go.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
John. I love you. Thank you for coming. All right. See you.
All right. All right. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in. And what a beautiful way to end that. Nearly had me in tears, he did. He's a good man. I really like John. He helped me a lot at the beginning. I was very blessed to meet John right at the very, very beginning, and a lot of other people too. But thank you for joining us. I want to rave on about him now. We'll have him back on. You have a wonderful evening, everyone, and I'll see you next week.
Something was wrong, we felt it inside. Something told us do not comply. Turn off the news, turn off the TV. It's time to think, get off your knees. We tried to warn loved ones, oh did we try? We tried to save lives, but we were denied. Sadly we failed and many of them died. We were kicked to the side, we did not hide. We took to the streets, we would not comply. Our conscience told us this was the world's largest lie. At first we were few, but we shortly grew. Melbourne streets saw sights that had never been seen. We fought for our rights, for all to be free. People thrown to the ground, pepper spray to the face. No matter what age, we were locked up and caged. Then the guns came out, they had no care. They shot their own people, running in fear, unarmed and peaceful. We stood for our rights, they would not stop us. We would not give up the fight. We were locked out of cafes, our families withdrew. No Christmas, no birthdays, no celebrations we knew. We were germs, enemies, a danger to you. You watched the counts on mainstream news. No further would you look, we were all cooked. Deluded, brainwashed, segregation we lived through, whilst you lived your life without any clue. People thrown to the ground, pepper sprayed to the face. No matter what age, we were locked up and caged. Then the guns came out, they had no care. They shot their own people, running in fear, unarmed and peaceful. We stood for our rights, they would not stop us. We would not give up the fight. Something was wrong, we felt it inside. Something told us do not comply.